Welcome everyone to another edition of the Classic Comic Archive, a series where I recap and review many of Marvel Comics' most seminal early issues. Our story for today is Tales to Astonish 38, cover dated December of 1962. This issue marks the first appearance of longtime Ant-Man villain, Egghead, and was written by Stan Lee and Larry Lieber, and drawn by Jack Kirby. Our issue opens up with a striking splash page, teasing Ant-Man's coming battle with the wicked Egghead. But before we can witness such an epic showdown, we must first travel to a gathering of some of New York's most vile gangsters. Each of their criminal empires are on the verge of collapse, as Ant-Man's been foiling all of their recent schemes. They've come together to defeat him, but know that they can't do it with brute force alone. So they decide to outsmart him instead. But they're just gangsters, not mad scientists. So they begin searching for one to ally with, and find a promising candidate in a man known as Egghead. He's a rogue scientist infamous for selling atomic secrets to foreign enemies. Seeing as he's both brilliant and willing to break the law, they contact him and offer him $10,000 if he can defeat Ant-Man. He accepts the job, and we next see him within his laboratory watching a documentary about the hero. It shows that he often relies on the aid of his ants, leading Egghead to conclude that without their help, Ant-Man would be far less dangerous. So he sets out to discover how he communicates with his ants, and then duplicate the process for his own means. In a testament to his intelligence, he's able to do it quite quickly, and crafts a device that allows him to speak with ants. With this device in tow, he then heads out to an empty field with a large anthill. He broadcasts a message to its residents, in which he claims to be their friend, and offers them a chance to turn Ant-Man into their slave, like he had done to them. All they have to do is warn the hero of an upcoming museum heist, where he'll be waiting with a trap. The ants don't provide much of a response to his offer, but Egghead assumes that they'll follow his commands, and thus leaves to begin the second phase of his plan. So we next see him back with the gangsters, who've just agreed to his plot, as it's an opportunity to both defeat Ant-Man, and steal an expensive necklace from the museum. So the issue shifts forward to later that night, as the gangsters are in the museum stealing the necklace. While they haven't tripped the burglar alarm, they still have a getaway car waiting outside in case they're caught. But it's then that Ant-Man sneakily arrives, seemingly confirming that his ants have betrayed him. But at least in this moment, they're following his commands, as he orders them to climb him up to an open window. But what he doesn't know is that Egghead is there waiting with a trap. So as Ant-Man arrives inside the museum, the villain immediately blasts him with a torrent of air. With his tiny size, the blast is like that of a hurricane, and he's sent careening into a box lined with flypaper. Despite how simple the trap is, Egghead assumes that it's defeated Ant-Man, as surely he can't escape from the sticky flypaper. But of course he can, as he activates hidden springs within his shoes, and mightily leaps out. Realizing that his plan has failed, Egghead flees the scene to come up with a new one. The gangsters then arrive in his stead, and begin battling Ant-Man to keep the stolen necklace. But they'd said it themselves, they can't defeat him with brute force alone, as he easily dodges all of their attacks. But the gangsters are persistent, for as much as they're struggling against him, they think that they'll be able to defeat him now that his ants have betrayed him. But they actually haven't, as they silently crawl onto the ceiling and trap most of the crooks in a massive sheet of flypaper. The few who weren't caught in it realize that they've been beaten, and race to flee the scene while they still have the chance. But they don't get very far, as they find that the tires of their getaway car have been popped. Thus with nowhere to go, they're easily cornered by the police, who've just arrived on the scene. A short while later, Ant-Man heads out to greet them, and explains that Egghead's fatal error was assuming that his ants consider themselves helpless slaves, when in reality they're his friends and partners. They of course told him of Egghead's plan, giving him time to prepare for it. And prepare he did, as he'd covered himself in an oily substance that prevented him from sticking to flypaper. And when he arrived at the museum, he silently popped the tires of the getaway car, and then alerted the police to the heist. The only thing that went awry was Egghead's escape. But it doesn't seem that he'll be bothering anyone anytime soon, as he's now wanted by both the police and the underworld. Illustrating this perfectly are a few final panels, showing a disheveled Egghead holed up in a cheap hotel, rambling about ants like a madman. That concludes the Ant-Man story in Tales to Astonish 38, and another episode of the Classic Comic Archive. But as always, I would like to offer a brief review of this issue. Overall, I thought that this was a fairly bland and boring story. It was only 10 pages long, which definitely didn't work in its favor. It just wasn't given enough time to build intrigue, or develop any characters, and was forced to rely on worn-out tropes we've seen countless times before. I do have to admit that Egghead was a standout in this issue. But only because he's perhaps the lamest and most generic mad scientist I've ever seen. But in any case, let me know what you thought of this issue in the video, and feel free to suggest other classic comics for me to cover. Thanks for watching.